Hey, everybody, it's Pastor Martin. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to get started in just a moment. Come on in, please share it with someone or come in. We're going to be sharing in just a moment as we talk ministry tonight. I know it's going to bless you. So come on in. Hey, everybody, it's Pastor Martin, and I'm grateful that you've joined me on tonight. I pray and trust that you are blessed. Please let me know if you can hear me very clear tonight. I've got a sort of a different setup, but I want to make sure that you are hearing me very clear on tonight as we talk ministry on tonight. And so please let me know if you can hear me. And just wave at me, send a wave or something, or just say I can hear you in the comment section as we prepare ourselves tonight to talk ministry with you. You know, so many, I've saw and talked with so many people that are in ministry, and many of them have said to me, Pastor Martin, ministry is getting a little to the place where I'm just sort of wondering about it and wondering about being in ministry and those things. And so tonight I want to share with you and talk with you and want to talk with many of you that may be going through in ministry and feel some type of way about ministry and how you feel about it. Many of you have just started. Some of you have been in it a while. Some of you have been probably like me. You've been in it a long time. And you're just sort of trying to figure out how you're going to do this and how ministry is going to work. And so tonight I want to share with you, and maybe we can discuss it and talk about it, because some of you have come too far to give up now. Some of you have come too far not to continue to do what God has called you to do. And certainly, by all means, we want to make sure that you are doing what God has called you to do, and encourage you tonight. You know, after all of these years of being in ministry, I can tell you I've had some days that I just did not feel like it. I did not think it was going to work or how it was going to turn out. But some kind of way, God has always made a way for things to happen. And so I want to encourage those of you. I've saw some, I've talked to some, I've saw some on their feeds, and they just talked about the things that they're going through. And not too long ago, we shared this, talking about ministry and talking about how you feel about ministry. Matter of fact, we did a segment where we talked about help me. It feels like I'm failing in ministry. And I want to start by saying tonight, again, I pray and trust you can hear me. If you can hear me, somebody just say I can hear you so I can continue going. I want to make sure that you're hearing me clear tonight. Again, I've got a different setup, and I want to make sure that you can hear me on tonight. If you just put in there, I can hear you, that would help me out a whole lot tonight. Let's see. All right. Well, I found out I got it. All right. Let me talk about this. First of all, let's deal with the reality of how you feel. Let's deal with the reality of what's going on with you, how you really feel. And that is that the way you're feeling is a real feeling. A lot of times people try to make you feel that you don't feel the way you feel. But even being saved, even being filled, whatever you want to say, you have real feelings. It's a real feeling. Sometimes you feel certain ways about ministry. You feel certain ways about things that's going on, and you feel certain ways about how things you could be feeling. And people try to act like because we are leaders and because we're pastors and preachers and in ministry and then involved in other phases of ministry that we don't feel this way. But let me tell you tonight that it is a real feeling. You will feel that way. And sometimes we have to understand that doing the will of God is not always easy. Sometimes when you're doing what God has called you to do, it's not always easy. Hey, Pastor Capers, how you doing? Sometimes doing the will of God is not always easy. Now, I know a lot of people try to make you feel that every day they get up, they feel like the Energizer Bunny and they are on and running. But let me help you tonight. There are days that doing the will of God can be something to deal with. You've got to really know and deal with what God is saying for you and telling you to do. And sometimes it's not always easy to do the will of God. It's not always easy to carry it out. It's not always easy, even though you know God's got your back, even though you know God's helping you. It's not always easy doing the will of God. And so sometimes you have to deal with the fact that I'm feeling some kind of way. I feel this way. And even after you've done the will of God, sometimes you can feel like you failed and things did not work and things did not turn out the way you anticipated or the way you thought or the way you envision it happening for you. And so you start saying to yourself, and things start coming to your mind, and you start saying to yourself, I'm a failure. I don't feel like I have accomplished whatever I think that I should have accomplished. I feel like a failure. I feel like things are not going the way I want them to go. Well, I've come to tell you that that is natural. Not only is it natural, it's something that happens to us. And so we got to learn how to deal with it and bring it to a proper perspective in our lives to say that I have those feelings. Sometimes we fail to realize that even with all we say we've got, the Holy Ghost and everything, that we are not greater than even those in the Bible. When you talk about Jeremiah, when you talk about even Jesus, when he was getting ready to be crucified, he said, Lord, if you can remove this bitter cup from me, but not my will, but thy will be done. He was having some little issues there. And I know somebody said, well, no, yes, that's what he was saying. Lord, listen, it's your will, not my will. But if you could remove this bitter cup from me, if you could take this away. But now understand that all of us feel some kind of way when it comes down to ministry and where we are. And so sometimes you can feel this way. You have these feelings. And so just for a few minutes, and I'm not going to be long tonight, but I want to encourage somebody just for a few minutes. Let's talk about why. What is the reason I feel this way? Why do I feel like I'm a failure? Why do I feel like things have failed or I fail? Because what you're really saying, if you say you fail, you're really saying that you fail God. And I don't believe that those of you that are watching, those of you that will watch, I don't believe that that's what you mean, that you fail God. You may feel like a failure, but I've come to tell you that you didn't fail God. Now, some of the reasons we can feel the way that we feel about this is one of the main reasons is, number one, that I believe is that we stop focusing on what God called us to do. You know, it's so easy to stop focusing on what God called you to do or called us to do that we start focusing on something else. It's easy for us to lose our focus and our attention on what God has called us to do. Sometimes, if you really think about it, many times, if you go back and look at some of the stuff we've done, some of the things we've incorporated, some of the things we might have done that maybe did not pan out, maybe they didn't work. When you think back on it, it was not so much that God told us to do it. Sometimes we were doing it because we seen others doing it, and we wanted to make sure if we did it, that it may work, not knowing that sometimes what others did may not work for us. It may not work in our ministry. It may not work in our lives. So we've got to change some things when it comes to that, and we've got to get back to focusing on what God has called us to do. That's important. That's the very important thing, that we must focus on what God has called us to do. Now, another thing that the reason we sometimes lose this is because we're so busy comparing ourselves. This could be a reason we feel like a failure, is because we're comparing ourselves to others and what they're doing. You know, there's nothing wrong with gleaning and watching what others are doing. But I want to tell you, whenever you start comparing yourself to others, sometimes you set yourself up for failure. I'm going to say that again. Sometimes when you go to comparing yourself to others, many times you set yourself up for failure. Because sometimes, I don't care how much information and how much people will give you, some things may not work for you. And if they don't work for you, there's no need of you going through changes, because comparison, when you keep comparing yourself in ministry to this one, to that one, to the other, how they speak, how they do it, how they say it, how they administrate, how they do things, you are setting yourself up for failure. Because you cannot always just look at what others are doing. Because sometimes, did you not know, there's some things that you may see on the surface, but you may not see the work that went on behind the scene. There's some things you may see on the surface, but there's some things you may not have seen that they were doing to set that thing up to get it to where it was. It's like many that watch, when you watch these lives, when you think of watching this live tonight, and I'm doing this live, but understand that when I do this live on Wednesdays, and when I do my lives, I'm setting up. I've got TV lights. I've got a microphone that's in front of me that I'm talking into. I've got a mixer. I've set up things prior. Sometimes it takes me an hour to 2 hours to set it up, the lighting, just to make sure everything is right, simply because I want everything to be right. I want everything to flow. And so because it's live, I want it to flow properly. I want it to flow right. And so understand that sometimes when we start comparing ourselves, we don't know the preparation. We don't know the things that have went in. We don't know what they've done to set things up that make them look the way they look. That's why we've got to understand that you cannot always compare yourself to everybody else. You can't always compare yourself to what they're doing. You can't compare yourself to every church. You can't compare yourself to every minister. You can't compare yourself to everybody that is doing something, not only just in ministry, just in life. Sometimes we set ourselves up for failure because we're always comparing. You're comparing your home to the other person's home, and you don't even live in their house, so you don't know what issues they may really have in their house. But you're comparing yourself to that house. You're comparing yourself to that marriage. You're comparing yourself. You don't know, just because folk are speaking and talking in public and acting all lovey-dovey, you don't know if they're having problems behind the scene. But you've compared your marriage to theirs, and you don't know. And so the comparison thing is really one of the things that's really hurt us when it comes to ministry. We're so busy trying to compare ourselves to others and what they do. And it's really not necessary, because it's not something that God has actually called us to do, and that is to compare ourselves. Then the next thing that sometimes makes us that we may feel like we're failing is sometimes we don't understand what success really looks like. You know, a lot of times we think success is a lot of things that the world pictures as success. A big home, a big car, a big house, a lot of money in the bank, success. We compare success in ministry, a large church, thousands of members, and all of that we compare and say that's success. Well, let me help you out. When you look at things that are successful, things are successful when they do what they were created to do. I'm going to say that again. They are successful when they do what they were created to do. What do you mean? Well, think about it. When you think of different things, if you got a saw and you're sawing something and you're trying to saw it and it does not saw the wood, then you can understand that that saw is not successful simply because it did not do what it was created to do. Think about it. If you got a hammer and you're trying to drive a nail and it does not drive the nail, then understand that the hammer is not successful. And so when you start looking at success, you got to know what is success for you. Many of you, you're successful, but you're so busy trying to be successful like somebody else and measure yourself according to what their success measuring stick is, that you mess yourself up and put yourself in a dilemma trying to do what everyone else is doing because you're feeling, if I do that, then I'm successful. But understand, you've got to know that if God has called you, you're successful. Even though you may feel like things are not working and you may feel like things are not going together, amen. You've got to say to yourself that I am successful at what I'm doing. If you're ministering to people, they're being delivered, you're successful. I don't care if it's 10. If they are being set free, hearing the word, their lives are being changed, you're successful. No matter what it is, you're successful. Now, numbers, I know people say numbers are not important. Numbers are important at times. But then understand that we've got to be balanced in our teaching, because understand, numbers sometimes, because you have numbers, don't mean you're having impact. Because you've got numbers don't mean you're being successful. Okay, so let's talk about that, because somebody says, well, I got all these numbers. That don't mean you're making impact. You can have a lot of numbers and not be making impact. And so we've got to understand that. So stop measuring yourself according to numbers. Ministry is sometimes ministry. If people don't want to admit this, but sometimes ministry can be like that roller coaster. Ministry can be up and down. Sometimes it can be a roller coaster ride. You can be in the thing where there's some up, way up, and then some things where you hit some low points. And so you got to understand that. That's the reality that we don't hear about. Everyone talks about the success of their ministry, but no one talks about the other part of ministry, whether it was a roller coaster ride or whatever that brought them to a certain place. You've got to deal with the whole thing. So now understand that you've got to know what success is. Another thing, and I'm almost done, is we've got to understand the reason sometimes we feel like we are a failure is because we're using other people's blueprints. And so there's nothing wrong with using the blueprint, but sometimes the blueprint may not work where you are. And if the blueprint don't work where you are, then you bought the blueprint in vain. I'll say that again. If the blueprint does not work where you are and it wasn't for you in the first place, then it may not be your blueprint, and it may not be what God has called you to do. So that's where you got to look at it. Am I using what God has given me to use? Or am I using somebody else's blueprint to make it seem like that that's something to work for me? In other words, let me put it this way. Sunday mornings. Now, there are some people that actually need 8 a.m. services, 10 a.m., 12:30. They've got a crowd like that. But then there's some, you don't need an 8:30 service, 8 a.m. service. You know, say, well, I need it because people want to get to church early so they can have their day free. We'll talk about that another time. But now, if you at 8, if you're not packed out at 8, and then you get to 10, and you're preaching to basically the same people at 8 and 10. The musicians have to stay for both of those services. And you're preaching, giving it up, you're all doing everything you can. And let's just throw this in there. And then your finances are the same whether you had 2 or 1 service. Then maybe you need to meet in the middle. Maybe you need to have a 9 a.m. service and then just go on. But sometimes we don't do that because somebody else told us they had an 8 a.m. service. So we added another service that we did not need just because we heard somebody else say it. And so now we're discouraged because it's not working the way we thought it was going to work. Well, think about it. It wasn't your blueprint in the first place. It was what somebody else was doing, and you thought it would work for you, so you did it. And I'm just being totally honest with you tonight. We did some things that God never told us to do. We did some stuff that other folk were doing that we possibly shouldn't have done. So we used somebody else's blueprint. When David, in the scripture, when he got ready to deal with Goliath, they wanted to give David a sword. They wanted to give David all their gear that he would go out to defeat Goliath. And David said, I can't use that. I haven't even proven that. That's not for me. I know this here is going to work. I'm going to get my slingshot. And he went and got him some 5 smooth stones and killed the giant. Why? Because he understood what I've got will work if God gave it to me. And that's what I want to tell you tonight. If God gave it to you, it will work. Why are we praying and asking God to give us? Why are we praying and asking God to lead us and to guide us? Why are we praying in ministry? Why are we fasting in ministry and asking God to lead us? And then when he speaks to us, we don't do what he tells us to do, and we go copy somebody else and do what they're doing and then wondering why it's not working. If God told you to do it this way, do it the way he told you to do it, and it will work for you. Then we won't have to say, I feel like a failure. We'll say, I'm doing what God told me to do. And as long as I'm obeying God, as long as I'm doing the will of God and doing what God is speaking and saying to me, then I'm going to be fine. And this is where we've got to go. We've got to deal with that. We've got to stop using everyone else's blueprint. You got to stop judging ourselves according to everyone else's standards. Let me say this, and I'm just about done. Some of you and some of us, even when you do a live, you look at the live and you look at the numbers and you look at somebody else and they got 500 people watching. You look at somebody else, they got 330. You look at somebody else, they got 50 people watching. You look at somebody else, they got 103. Then you start your live and you only got 4 or 5 watching. So you get discouraged and say, I'm not going to do it. Now, what you are saying has a lot of content. It's impactful. But because you didn't see the numbers, because you didn't get thumbs up, because you didn't get a lot of hearts, because you didn't get a lot of whatever, you just quit doing it because you felt ain't nobody listening. What you fail to realize is the way it's set up. People are watching you that you don't know they're watching because of the changes on Facebook and other places. They can watch you. I did a segment not too long ago. I talked about the gated community and the ungated community. Facebook is a gated community. People have to sign on to watch you, basically. YouTube is ungated. You don't have to sign on. You can just type a name, and if I'm on live, you can see it. You can sign in to make comments, but if you're not making comments, you don't have to. On Facebook, people can watch you without even you knowing them. They're watching you, but they're watching you. I was at a homegoing service on Saturday, and a lady and her daughters were singing. And when I was coming out, as we come out, she said to me, the lady in the wheelchair shook my hand. She said, I watch you on Facebook. People are watching you, but we're so busy trying to measure what we do by somebody else's standards, and whether we get a lot of views or whether we've got a lot of people watching us live or whether we get a lot of thumbs up and hearts or whether we're looking for validation by people. If they like what we're doing, if they put it on there, then we like, woo, people like me. Not understanding that some people, they just do what they do. Some people like stuff. It's not that you're not good. It's not that you don't have any content. It's not that what you're saying is not good. Some people only like it from popular people or people they think are popular. They like their stuff, and they would never give you a thumbs up. They'll never compliment or make a comment on your post or whatever your live, because they don't want you to know that you may be saying something. Now watch this. Now the same people will watch you, and then somebody else will come along and say the same thing you said, and they'll make a big post of it, and put their name under it. And sometimes you don't even know that the person that they're quoting got it from you. They were watching you, and then they came and quoted it in their segment. How many times have I went to preach, and the preacher said to me, I'm going to pay you some tithes on that one because I'm going to preach that. I was somewhere, someone called me one day, and they said to me, they asked me a question. I had this question 2 or 3 times. Someone asked me, they said, Pastor Martin, they said, didn't you preach this message? The title of the message was Notable Miracles That Cannot Be Denied. God's going to give us notable miracles that can't be denied. And someone called me. They said, Pastor Martin, didn't you preach that message? I said, yeah, that was my message I preached. And they said, I thought you preached it. And they went on to tell me that somebody had preached it somewhere in another state. And I said, oh, okay. And then someone else asked me not so long ago, they said, now, didn't you preach this? I remember you preaching this message years ago, if it had not been for these things. And I said, yeah, I preached that years ago. They said, I thought that was your message. So, of course, people will never, when I say never, sometimes they will never admit that they've heard your stuff. They'll never admit they use your stuff. They'll never admit they watch your live. They'll never admit that they watch your stuff. Never comment. They ain't going to ever say nothing. But you can't be discouraged. You can't base what God has called you to do and feel that you're a failure based on other people's standards. You can't wait for their validation on Facebook and their numbers and whether they give you thumbs and hearts. You can't do it. Believe me, can't do it. You got to do what God has called you to do and continue working with what he's called you to do. I want to encourage you tonight that you are not a failure. You're not a failure. God has done some things in your life. You've got some positive things that have been done, some positive things that you're doing. There are things that all of us are doing. I often say to people, when you think of ministry, you got to think of it in a global sense. And what do you mean global? We don't understand. I did TV for many, many years here in the city. I was on television every Saturday night for about 7 years. I was on TV every Saturday night at 11 o'clock. And I can't tell you how many pastors would text me at 11 o'clock, said, Doc, I'm preaching that in the morning. And some of them got mega churches. And they said, man, I'm using this. So understand, I don't have the biggest church in the city. Don't have the biggest congregation. But from where I am, we do global ministry. And that's why you got to understand and you got to start looking. I'm not a failure. I'm doing something global. And you got to know that. Our state supervisor was with us not too long ago. And her and her niece came, and her niece said to her, she shared with us, Mother Rogers said, my niece said, oh my God, their church is not a big church, but they're doing global stuff. They're doing stuff like mega ministry. And so you got to understand the building and even the congregation does not stop you from doing ministry or mega ministry, whether you are the evangelist or a pastor or whatever it is. It don't stop you from doing it. What do you mean? When you go to TV sets, and I often say this, when you go to a TV set, when you look at Steve Harvey, when you look at those shows that come on, whatever show you might watch, you have to understand that in those audiences, in those people that's in the audience, sometimes those places only seat maybe 100 people, some of them 150, some of them may seat a little bit more than that. You just never know. But they don't seat a whole lot of people, and they don't build it for seating a lot of people. That's not why they build it. That's not why they built that. They built that strictly for cameras and to broadcast, to tape a show and to broadcast it live all over the world, or to tape it and broadcast it on different stations. That's what they do. And so you've got to understand that you can be global. Let's take this. Watch this. Watch this. I hear you. Hey, Lambert. Hey, Will Collins. Watch this. I'm right here. I'm in my office. Those of you that are watching me right now, I'm in my office. If you don't mind, just type where you're watching from. Whatever city, whatever state, type where you're watching from. If you're not here in Atlanta, type wherever you're watching from. If it's Jersey, whatever it is, if you would do me that favor and just type where you're watching from, because I want to show you that you can be here and be reaching people all over the world. Do you hear what I'm saying? I can be right here and reaching people all over the world right now. And I'm sitting right here, New Jersey. See that? Wilcox is in New Jersey and he's watching me and I'm in Atlanta. So what that means is you're not limited. Stop thinking you're a failure. You're not limited. I want to encourage some of you tonight. What you need to do, and you need to inbox me because I want to help some of you out. You can take your vision, your streaming, your ministry to another level where people will respond to you. I've got people that say to me, Pastor Martin, we watch you. This past Sunday, someone was watching us from London. Someone was watching us from Italy. Someone was watching us from another place, Paris or somewhere else. And they watch us every Sunday. I've got people from Paris and Italy that tied to our ministry. They give tithe. They tied to the church. Some of them have been there once. Some of them have never been there. But they sold our ministry. I got people in California that watch us faithfully every Sunday. Why? Because right where I am, I'm not a failure. I'm global right where I am tonight. And then those of you that are watching, there'll be somebody else that will watch it later, share it, and it'll be global. So I want to tell you, stop thinking. You got to think like they do in the movie arena, in talk show arenas. They don't build it just for numbers. They don't build those studios no, that's not where they build it. They build it that they can reach beyond those walls. The people that's in the audience just make up what they're doing, but they're reaching beyond the walls by doing what they're doing. And so I want to encourage you tonight. Don't ever let nobody make you feel that you're not doing. There's no way anybody can make me feel that at Restoration Revival, Church of God in Christ, Pastor Dennis L. Martin, we're now making impact. I meet too many people in the street that let me know you're making impact. I heard the word that you ministered. You were preaching to me. Thank you for the word. So we're making impact, not just to the people in our congregation, but we're making impact to those that are watching us. And so I want to encourage those of you. I want to encourage you tonight. I want to encourage you. Don't say to yourself anymore that I'm a failure. You're not a failure. You're not a failure. Stop waiting on others to approve you. I'm going to get out of here. Stop waiting on others to approve you. Stop waiting on people to do those things. And just know that God is getting ready to bless you. He's going to move for you. Things are going to happen for you. And don't get caught up. Don't ever let anybody try to make you feel a certain way. In my closing, let me say this. I want you to keep saying to yourself, I'm not a failure. I'm doing what God has called me to do. And if I'm doing the will of God and what God has called me to do, then certainly I'm not failing at all. I'm doing what God has called me to do, and I am not a failure. I'm not a failure. You got to keep telling yourself, I am not a failure. I am not a failure. I'm going back Sunday morning. I'm going back on the field. I'm going back and do what God called me to do, because at the end of the day, God called me. And I'm here to tell you, God will open doors, make ways for you. And, a lot of people, they get caught up in preaching for just the big church. I want to encourage you, when a small church invites you to come, go. You'll be surprised what small churches can do. You'll be surprised what a blessing they can be to you. And then you'll be surprised if those pastors that are in the small church that are friends with those in the big church. I can't tell you how many times I preached in a storefront, and the storefront pastor told the mega church about me, and they invited me to preach. You just never know how God's going to set that thing up. But you got to keep on. Don't allow anybody to make you feel you're a failure. Keep bettering yourself. Keep saying to yourself, I'm going to do better. I'm going to do the things I need to do. But by no means am I a failure. Even if folk don't want to use you, if folk don't want to invite you, if folk don't want you hanging out with them, it doesn't matter. I mean, you got to know what God's called you to do. You've got to know if the hand of God is on you. You got to know that and keep on going. You can't do nothing else. You got to keep on going, keep on going. And I want you to keep pressing. I want you to keep pressing. I said keep pressing, keep going. And I want to encourage some pastors tonight. You may not have the biggest church. Maybe God's going to give you a bigger one. Maybe God's going to give you a big congregation. Maybe not. You may never pastor a mega church. You may never pastor a church that's got a lot of folk. You may never. But you're not a failure. Be faithful to the ones he called you to. I've said this before, and in my closing, I'm going to say it again. Over the last few years, we've seen two things pop up. Well, we've seen hospitals. I'm here in Atlanta. There was Grady Memorial Hospital. Then there were other hospitals in the city. But then lately we've seen urgent care pop up. Urgent care, on a lower scale, they do what hospitals do. And many people have chose to go to urgent care many times before they go to the big hospital. They'll go to urgent care for the fact that when they get the urgent care, they're getting their needs met or whatever. I want to say to you, as a pastor, as a preacher, let me help you. I got to help you with your mentality, your way of thinking. Everybody, and this is no slight, I'm not throwing shade, but everybody don't want to go to a big church. Everyone don't want to go to a mega ministry. Everyone don't want to go to a church that's got 20,000 members. Everyone don't want to go to a church that's got 10, 5,000 members, 1,000 members. Some people don't even want to go to a church got 500 members. Some people don't even want to go to a church got 200 members. Some people want to go to a church that's got a few members, maybe 50 or 60 members, and they can fellowship with those members. They can get the word. They can get prayer. Well, the pastor knows their name. Well, the pastor can call their name. Some of them, that's where they want to go. We've got it in our mind that everyone wants to go to a big church. Then there's some folk don't want to go to no small church. I've seen some people that's been in a small church for years, and I've been trying to figure out why they still here. They ain't planning on going nowhere. They're not trying to go nowhere. That's their preference. Some of them believe that's where the Lord has called them to be, and that's where they are. And so we've got to get to the place that we understand that we have got to stop, allowing ourselves to just think that, everyone wants to be there in a certain place, and stop talking about you a failure. Do what God's called you to do. Minister the way God's called you to minister. And I promise you he'll bless you. I promise you. I can almost guarantee you that he'll bless you. Somebody wants to hear what you got to say. Somebody wants to hear you. You are anointed for somebody. And you got to keep telling yourself that you are anointed for somebody. I know I'm anointed for somebody. I know I am. And so I thank God for longevity. I thank God for 42 years of doing this. And I'm here to tell you, I'm being honest. Some days I felt like quitting like you. I felt like giving up. I had some days I was like, Lord, I'm about done with this. I'm through. I promise you, I'm done. But you know what? When he's called you, you just can't get away that easy. He puts you under arrest. And my God, the next thing you know, you're out there preaching like two worlds are coming to an end. And you're saying to yourself, oh my God, God has done something great in my life. And so as a pastor tonight, as an evangelist, as a prophet, a prophetess, whatever your calling is, even if you're doing helping the homeless, if you're doing whatever it is you're doing, it don't have to be in the pulpit. I want to encourage you tonight. I want to tell you, I want to look you right in your eyes tonight and tell you, you are not a failure. Don't let nobody tell you that. Don't let nobody convince you that you are, because you're not. If you're doing what God called you to do, then take it from me, you're successful with doing the will of God. You have to do it like nobody else. Do it like you. Be yourself and watch God bless you. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm grateful to have you with me. I'm going to say a word of prayer for those of you tonight, and then I'm going to share something else with you I want you to be a part of. I believe it'll be a blessing to you. And I see Pastor Pace, Patricia Pace on here. She's just retired from ministry, pastoring churches and building ministries and churches in the AME church. And, listen, there's some people that can tell you it's not always that easy. And if folk be honest, there's some people that can tell you that are what we call mega. If they'll be honest, they can tell you things that are always looking like the way it's looking. I don't want to give this secret away, but let me give it away anyway. You know, when people have really large crowds, they show everything. But even on a phone or whatever, some of us, I don't have a problem with you saying whatever our crowds is, because there's whatever it is. But if sometimes when you see in big churches, sometimes it's real dark way in the back, and you see people, well, most of the times they have it either roped off or they have people that they pull them closer in. And those people have to sit in certain places so it can look a certain way for the camera. And then they dim the lights in the back areas where nobody's sitting, so you won't be able to see that. Then if somebody's using the thing and they're live streaming, sometimes, they don't ever go and pan the audience. They just go to where the preacher is and maybe the first row and pan back because sometimes people may be embarrassed of what crowd they have. I don't know what that may be. But now, don't get discouraged. A lot of people, there's a lot that's been going on with a lot of churches these days. Crowds have been up, crowds have been down. It's just been that way. People have joined, then you got people that join that sometimes, they be there and then you don't see them again. It's a lot going on with church. And sometimes you have to find out other strategies, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But I want to encourage you, keep on doing what you're doing, and the Lord will bless you. So let me pray for you now. Father, in Jesus' name, I pray for everyone that's watching. I pray for every minister. I pray for every pastor. I pray for those that are in ministry, those that are even not in ministry, just in life, that feel that they have failed. They feel that they are failure in life. I pray tonight that you would touch them and put a fire under them. I pray that you would cause them to understand that you are God, and God, that your hand is on them. You breathe on them, and you're causing them to be able to do those things that they need to do and those things you've called them to do. So I pray for your touch tonight. I pray for your power. I pray for your hand upon them tonight. Lay hands on them and let your glory and your power touch them tonight. In the name of Jesus, I pray, God, that someone would go back to church. Someone would go back to the homeless shelter. Someone would go back to doing their lives. Someone would go back to doing what you called them to do. Let them do it with a passion. Let them do it, God, knowing that your hand is on them. Let them do it and let them feel your glory. Let them feel your backing. Give them the confidence they need to work and do it again. And God, we give you glory and we give you praise and we give you honor. We speak it and call it done. We thank you for restoration, restoration upon the lives of your people. Every minister, God, where they're functioning, where they're flowing at, cause them to flow in that area and be a blessing in that place. And we'll give your name glory, and we'll give your name honor, and we'll give your name praise. In Jesus' name, thank God. Amen. Now, this is for everyone tonight. It's for singers and everyone else. I pray and trust that you were blessed tonight. Now, listen, let me invite you to something. Let me see, can I pull it up here? I want you to be a part of something that we're doing, and I want you to be a part of this, and let's see if we can get it there. There we go. Listen, God had me to do something that I started and something new. And if you haven't seen it, been a part of it, I've listed some videos. They're on Facebook. If you're not following me on YouTube, please go to YouTube, DL Martin 96. Follow me on YouTube, subscribe to me, hit the button that when I do anything on YouTube, upload a video, you will get it. Also here on Facebook, follow me here on Facebook. And those of you on Periscope, follow me. Those of you that would go to my website, dlmartin.org, do that. And I want you to be a part. Now, this is what I'm doing. It's called Wisdom in the Pulpit. That's right. Wisdom in the Pulpit. You know, so often we do wisdom and we try to give people wisdom from the pulpit that sometimes we don't give them wisdom in the pulpit. And this is for ministers. This is for those that are in ministry, those that are just getting started. After 42 years of ministry and being in ministry, I've done some things in the pulpit that I thought was good. Then I've done some things that were just the wrong thing to do. And so I've started these things, Wisdom in the Pulpit, and you'll be able to watch them. And I want you to share them with your friends, your colleagues. Share them. You can go, if you're on Instagram, you can follow me on Instagram and on IGTV. They're there. My church Instagram, Restoration Revival, they're there. It's on YouTube. It's on Facebook. I want you to help me share this tonight. Wisdom in the Pulpit. I know it'll be a blessing to you. I know it'll bless you. So please share it with somebody and do me that favor. And I know God will bless you for doing that. If you would help me and if you would do that on what we're doing. And so I want to challenge you. Wisdom in the Pulpit, please help me push that. Please help me share that. Now, many of you, these next few weeks, we've got convocation, other things coming up, but I want you all to subscribe here because I'm going to be sharing some things that I want to share with you. There's some young ministers and preachers and those that have asked. They said, Pastor Martin, we want you to help us. We want you to sit down, talk with us, share with us. And I want to do that for you. I want you can inbox me your information. If you inbox me your name and your number, or you can go to my website, dlmartin.org. Go there and give me your information, your phone number. Then I will send out a message to you. And we're going to do some things where we'll do some private sessions online that we'll be able to ask questions and we'll be able to share some things with you. So I want you to do that because I know it's going to bless you. Yes, I know it's going to bless you as you follow what we're doing. And so please, by all means, please come back and let's do that. Well, the Lord bless you tonight. I want to thank you again for joining me. Thank you again for sharing with me tonight. See you, Dr. Lackey. See you, Champ. Want to thank you so much for being a part tonight and sharing with us tonight. And I want you to know God is going to do great things for you. Don't give up. Whatever you do, keep pressing. I mean, keep pressing. Press. You're going to make it. Press. You're going to be successful. Press. Everything is going to be all right. God has great things in store for you. Thank you once again for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday with Let's Talk Ministry with Pastor Dennis Martin.